this may be the opportunity for me to introduce Steve is probably something as a nightmare for Steve. I've known Steve a long, long time, and in fact, he was one of the very first individuals that I went to when I was considering coming here to Fort Hays 9 years ago. And Steve said, Tim, if you want to do that and you want to make a difference, you will. And I think that was great advice from a guy that lived and continues to live by those same words. Make a commitment to make a change, and you will. So thank you, Steve, for that advice to me. And it's great for me to be able to say thank you for what you're doing for Fort Hays State. Not only in a broad scope for students today, but those tomorrow. It's fantastic. The ultimate gift that you will provide and the current gift that you are providing is going to make a difference. Steve has a true love for the arts as well. You ought to ask him to sit behind a piano sometime and play a song. He's very talented in that way. He's a fantastic art collector, and I do have some interest in that area as well. So we've had long conversations about those types of interests. In fact, Steve came to me several years ago and said, Tim, it would really be nice for us to document the history of key leaders here at Fort Hays State through portraiture work. And he commissioned the portrait of Dr. Hammond that currently hangs in the Union, and there's a portrait underway now of Dr. Martin. So I think it's fantastic that Steve is such a broad-scoped personality. His sense of humor, his articulate words, which you'll soon hear, can really change lives for students. He travels all over the world speaking. He's a noted author. He's just a very, very nice person that decided to make a change based on a personal experience that he had. And now that he's expressing that and moving that forward to Tigerland, we're going to be the beneficiaries of that for a long, long time. So Steve, if you'd please come forward.
I feel kind of special if I believe half of that. I am really pleased to have rekindled the relationship with Fort Hays that I enjoyed in the 70s. I remember once when I first got involved, and I said, well, I didn't graduate from here. I attended 2 years, and all the beer and polka dancing, I had to make a change. And no, seriously, those 2 years that I spent here were just absolutely formative in my development. And while I didn't graduate here, because I ended up going overseas and having a really large time for quite a long time, and didn't finish until I was well into my 30s. I was a non-traditional student who couldn't afford to spend the money on college, not because I couldn't afford to pay it, but my opportunities just started presenting themselves to me early, and I followed them. And I ultimately graduated from Kansas State University, and and I live in Manhattan, and I love Kansas State University as well. But there's something about Fort Hays that just hits me more in this way than K-State, even though I can look right out my front door and see it. And I taught there for 17 years. There's something about Hays that hits me here, maybe because of the time of the life that I was here. It was a large time. But I don't think that's it. You guys, because I'm an entrepreneur, and I was always slow. I was slow to talk, slow to walk, slower in school, slow to graduate from college. I was 38. I was slow to become a successful entrepreneur. I didn't start my company until I was 54 years old. So I'm just slow. But as I began to rebuild my relationship with Fort Hays, because you invited me to, I saw something. that relates to what the world is needing now and what it's not getting in a lot of academic environments. Academic environments, if I may be so bold, are becoming too sequestered and becoming increasingly irrelevant and laden with internal bureaucracies. And I have hired, I don't know how many students. I've hired hundreds and hundreds of college graduates in the last 20 years. And I have to spend way too much time readying them for the world. And I'm tired of doing it. It used to be you could tell a college person because they had graduated from one. And you can't tell anymore. You can't tell anymore. And they're not ready as they should be. And you know, I don't think that's true here. You can taste it, you can feel it, you can smell it. And it's entrepreneurial and it's not bureaucracy laden. And if the workforce, if the leaders of tomorrow are going to be what we really need them to be, because we need leaders now like we've never needed them, there's going to have to be more and more institutions of higher learning like Fort Hays State who is really world ready. That's not a tagline. That means the people that come out of here are ready for it and have the social skills and the people skills and the technical skills and the readiness to be of service. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing here. For a quarter of a century, Ed set a tone of being nimble in ways that sometimes would set you back a bit. But he took Fort Hays, who was in the back seat, truly, and not dissatisfied with itself either, and moved it ahead where he became the envy of all the rest of the schools in the Regent system. And whenever you have a longtime leader who passes the gavel, I'm just going to be real candid here. There's always kind of a breath holding that takes place, like who's it going to be? And really, if you look back, whether it's a coach or a college president or whoever it is that's been an astounding leader, the survival rate and the quality of the person coming behind them, because they're in that shadow, usually the person behind doesn't last very long. And so I wondered. And then I met President Martin. You've got a dynamo in your hands here. And so this, instead of being in the shadow of something that was significant and someone who helped that become significant, she's got the self-security to build upon it. Not feel overshadowed, but build upon it with confidence. And she's got it. And here's what she's going to bring besides continuing the nimbleness. Is if I go to an institution of higher learning to hear what they're going to, the value to bring, and I've been to quite a few of them, I have a son in college, and hear that we're going to get your child ready to go get a good job, and we're competitive that way, I'm just going to puke. You know, what I want to hear, and what we're hearing from President Martin, is not just about the education, and it's not just about being world ready in terms of skills. It's about citizenship. It's about, in the tradition borrowed from the liberal arts education environment, this university will bring all the benefit of its world readiness and build into it, into its character, service readiness, citizenship readiness. And that is what these disparate things that I'm contributing to, the SIGEPs and nursing and art, what have they got to do with each other? They really are very connected. In fact, almost everything is connected. We just seem to have forgotten it. But the fraternity, which, you know, I'm a SIGEP, and I had way too much fun down here on 6th Street. But I learned about relationships with people that you make a joint commitment with in purpose. Some I have continued fast friendships with. Some I don't. Some I enjoyed more than others, but we were all bonded in a joint commitment, and we learned how to be integrity-filled in those relationships regardless of how much we felt in closeness. And we learned how to be joined by purpose and citizenship, even if we were 17 and 18 and 19 years old. And that needs to sustain. And that was a great fraternity on this campus. It had a great legacy, and there's absolutely no reason why it can't be moving forward and helping shape this century. So I support it. And I trust and hope that you're gonna, the seeds that you've laid as the refounding group, that you're going to make sure that that character that was always there in the legacy of this fraternity on this campus will not only be preserved, but it will be strengthened. And then nursing, you know, because that's about growing citizenship. It's about integrity of relationship. And nursing is about service. And I like the nursing department here. And I don't enjoy nursing departments very much. Because people who get called to be of service, because they have a feeling, and because they want to administer and heal, end up getting trained to be nurses. And the trainings and the realities of the environments that they work in are not similar to what called them. And we're helping change that in the long-term care sector and now in the hospital sector. And the nursing department here, like the rest of the campus, doesn't have that thickness of wall to penetrate, and there's an openness to what the world is changing to, and I want to support that. But finally, in the arts, and I've told the folks at the foundation, I've told Tim, you know, this one I'm going to have to die before you get it. Because in my legacy plans, a third of my estate is coming to Fort Hays to the art department. Do you know how good your art department is here? You leave everybody in the dust in the entire Midwest, but I think you're globally competitive. It's just nothing that's measuring that. And I think the quality of a society is not the economy alone. We spend way too much damn time talking about the economy. It's how much do we value the artists? How much do we value the poets? How much do we value the spiritual leaders? How much do we value literature? That's when we start getting into depth of quality of a society. And the fact that the art department at Fort Hays is like it is, and it is stellar, that's also a representation of the entire university. The dominance and the proper place of art within the balance of the rest of the elements is as it should be. It's as it should be in our lives. So my legacy gift here is to ensure that regardless of who's in the chair, regardless who has more vision or less vision in the year 2050 or 2075 or whenever it is, that there will be resources there that will bring leverage to those who have vision and will help it sustain during the periods when there might not be the vision there. So I leave it with pride, but hopefully you're not going to get it purple.